It is one thing to say that in a workplace, you need to have masks if you're passing people in the hallway or you're at a conference table. We have that here at the radio station. It is another thing to say, all right, when you go to a store, you need to wear a mask. You need to be very careful when you have any encounter. But wearing a mask while on Zoom, I have to tell you, this is fine that we're on Zoom. It's a great communication method, but it's a lot harder with a mask. How in the world is this even an issue?
Well, Jeff, if I had called in today wearing a mask, you'd probably think I'd lost it because you know that I'm at home. I am not anywhere where there's anybody nearby. And you also know what time it is here, so nobody's awake in my house. But this is one of the things that really has people shaking their heads, thinking, why would you need to wear a mask if you're home alone on Zoom? What would be the rationale for that kind of a law? Well, in a word, starts with an O. Do you know what it is? Optics. They have decided, as have other agencies and some educational institutions, that optically you are basically showcasing the fact that you care about the transmissibility of COVID, even though you know that sitting at home by yourself, you can't transmit it to anybody. So it is a public service way of showcasing this really cooperation that you have with making sure that you do everything you can to prevent the spread. Now, the other side of that is, well, logically, it doesn't make any sense. Why should you have to do this? And there's a lot of pushback. And I got to tell you, living in California with rolling blackouts, cutting out the AC for periods of time, that's another layer of discomfort that somebody might have if you force them to wear a mask when they are the only one home alone. You know, if I had to do it, I'd probably get one of those shields, which I use when I go out jogging because it's a lot more comfortable and you can actually see through it as well. But that's the rationale for a law like this. It's not a law, it's actually a company policy, but it's getting a lot of attention, and who knows whether or not that'll make companies like this one rethink whether or not that should be necessary.
I fully understand the let's set a good public example. And if it were a big public presentation, et cetera, fully understand it. But when, again, it is few people interacting on Zoom, the communication, as I suggested, is bad enough. But if you can't see someone's mouth moving, you don't know the inflection. That's why some of these masks have the little plastic windows so you can see the mouth moving. In fact, for when we resume jury trials here in the state of Iowa, they've said whoever's speaking has to be seen. And that means the shield that you mentioned, or a mask with plastic over where your mouth is, because you lose so much and you've studied this and written about it, you lose so much from a communication standpoint when you don't get to see all the nuances of the person who is presenting the information.
Jeff, you're always one step ahead of me. I was going to give that example of the fact that in so many different jurisdictions, yours is one of them, you do have this opportunity, and it is one of the things that many people think is essential, of that transparent face mask or shield where you are able to see features and movement. Because remember, in court, there are court reporters taking down words. It's hard enough to hear the words. If you can at least see somebody's features, you have a far better chance at understanding them, recording what happens in the room. And who's to say that that wouldn't also be a great idea in other venues, other settings, other circumstances where you really want to have good communication? Like you and I putting on this show. It wouldn't make any sense if both of us were masked. We wouldn't hear each other. We couldn't see each other. And it's one of those things that if you require that at home, maybe there should be a relaxation of rules to maybe have different policies that don't involve mask wearing. You could probably find a happy medium there.
When the mayor of Waterloo was sitting more than 6 feet away from me in the studio, he had his mask on at all times. And it was a little muffled, but it was still good enough. But that's in a public setting with two people as opposed to in a room alone.
And it's those distinctions that make a difference, Jeff. And that is why there's some pushback when you can't find a rationale that's persuasive enough to mandate a rule like this. Having said that, you know, a lot of employees are doing what they need to do, wearing them on Zoom calls, just doing their part until this is all over. And that's admirable too.
Well, there's a lot of grace that needs to be involved with all this.
Amen. That's right.